So here's an agenda for today. We're going to start with a bit of an introduction. I'm going to cover some frequently asked questions about tests. So that's going to take about 5 minutes. And then we're going to be looking at a test that I previously made and going through all of the settings of the test, also showing up some new features that we had recently developed. And this is going to take most of the presentation, around 15 minutes. And after that, we're going to have 10 minutes for questions. So first off, we would like to ask you a poll. You can see it in the chat. You can vote for one of these options. And the question is, are you already using tests on the Sowiso platform? So you can say, yes, I'm already using them. No, but I want to see if it's something I could use. Or no, and I don't think it's something I could use. So ideally, hopefully it's not this third option, but you never know, of course, be honest. We're going to look into those results in just a second, but I'm going to cover some questions right away. So what do we mean by tests? We mean any kind of testing on the platform. So these could be diagnostic tests or weekly quizzes or any kind of end-of-the-year exams. This all will depend on the settings that you choose for your test. So here in the screenshot, you see two kinds of tests that I scheduled. The first one is going to be the weekly quiz, and the second one is the final exam, which is hidden because the date hasn't been reached yet. But you see that they look pretty much the same. And then in the next step, when the student clicks on the test, they're going to see all of the settings for that test, and they're going to know how many attempts they have, how long it's going to take, stuff like that. Next common question we get is there a question bank that I can use? And yes, there is. So if you're using one of our courses, you know that they contain a lot of exercises. You can use these same exercises to create your tests. And of course, they're always going to be randomized questions. Everybody's going to get new variables every time. So you can definitely use the same questions that students use for practice in a test. And then if you want to create your own exercises from scratch, that's very possible. And we always welcome this option. A lot of our teachers also create materials on the platform, and we provide help for that as well. Do I have to grade the test myself? You don't have to grade the test yourself. Of course, depends what kind of questions you're going to be using. But all of our tests are first automatically graded by the computer. So if you want to have like a practice test that's going to be available for a week or maybe even longer, where students have multiple attempts, you can definitely let the computer handle that without having to manually grade a bunch of tests. And then if you have like a summative exam at the end of the year, you can pay a bit more attention to that and maybe do some adjusted grading yourself. How can I make sure that the online testing is safe? We have a lot of questions. Sorry, there's something happening in the building. We have a lot of options possible to make your test safe. So for example, you can have a random order of questions, you can have password protection, IP range restriction, full screen mode testing, and safe exam browser. And then to keep in mind that all of our exercises are randomized. So even if the two students are going to sit right next to each other during a test, they're still going to be looking at different versions of a question. They're going to get different variables. And now we're going to go into the demo of a test. So here is one test that I made before. And I will show each of these steps one by one. So the first thing that you're going to get when you create any test or when you go to edit your test is the source. We have three options here. The first two options are for our authors, for the people who are creating their materials on the platform. They can prepare a test or an exam, as we call it, already in the authoring environment. And then at this step, they would just pull the full exam from there, and the questions are going to appear in the next step. And the third option is the course material. So this means that the same exercises that you saw in the course, the ones that you're using in your lessons, you can use those here again. And for this demo, I'm going to use this. But of course, if you have any questions about how to use a test or an exam, please leave those in the chat. In the next step, you will see all of your exercises. So here on the left side are the exercises that I can choose from, because this is the material that I have already added in my class. I can easily preview an exercise if I just click on this magnifying glass. And I can just choose an exercise by clicking on the checkbox, and it's going to be added on the right side. Everything you see on the right is going to show up on the test. You can see that we can organize exercises in sections. So this is one section, this kind of a blue square, and I named it integers. So that's quite handy that you can rename the sections, and it's going to be useful if you release your results to students, and if they are able to see the sections, they're going to see also the names, so they know, oh, I have to practice a bit more with integers next time, or some other section. Another super handy tool with sections is the filter options. So here I selected number 2, which means that out of these 4 questions, every student is going to get 2 random questions from this one section. So that makes it quite difficult to cheat. I mean, I hope nobody is cheating already or going into the test with the intent of cheating, but if they are, this is going to be quite difficult for them. You can also just leave this as a 0, and then all of the students are going to get all of these questions. Something that's quite new on the platform are these checks that you see here. So for this question, it says that it allows checks. So that means that the student is going to be able to check a question before submitting a test. So they get this little button at one question, and when they try to attempt to answer it, they can just click on it. The computer is going to grade it. They're not going to get the correct answer, but they're going to know if it's correct or not. So why we even developed this is because of the multiple choice questions. Before, it was possible to only check the full tests, which of course isn't ideal if you're going to have a lot of multiple choice questions, because it's very easy to guess after you've checked it once or twice. So here we mostly use these checks for other types of questions, so not multiple choice. And of course, as if with any regular test, you can always assign points to every question. So here you can just easily add, I want this to be a 4-point question. I can also open it up and see which question that was and assign different points. It's also possible to additionally shuffle the order of the section, of the questions in a section. So here I can just say shuffle it, and it's going to reorganize it a little bit. So that's pretty much it with this step. I'm going to go into the next one, which is the language settings. There's not much to say here, except that if you are creating your own exercises, always make sure that whichever language that you created the exercise in is going to be available for the test. So let's say you create an exercise in English, be sure to set English as the default language, because if you have any students using the platform in Dutch, for example, they're not going to be able to see the exercise if the exercise was only available in English. In the next step, you can choose the date and the time when the test is going to be available. So this looks quite different than it did a few months back. Now we have this start from and start before dates. So this is a period of time when the students can start the test. So let's say you have testing on location, and you have 30 minutes when the students are going to be walking into the room and starting the test. You can say, I want the test to start from 9:50 until 11:20, I don't know. And after that point, students will not see the test anymore on the home page, so they cannot start it anymore. Another setting here we have is the deadline, so that's a new setting as well. If you have deadline enabled, that means that at this point in time, all of the tests are going to be submitted for all of the students, even if they started it later on. So even if in those 30 minutes when they could walk into the room, they started it at the last minute possible, still they will end at the same time as the rest of their colleagues. And deadline is, of course, optional to use. You don't have to set a deadline. In the next step, I have the name of the tests, and this is mandatory. When you're creating your own test, make sure to put a name here, because it's not going to let you go further with your scheduling. You can also put in some information before the test begins. So this can be anything about the rules, or maybe they should use the calculator, how long it's going to be, anything additional you would like to say to your students. And you can also have some instructions during the test. So this is going to be present the whole time while they're doing the exercises. And then you can also send messages after the test. So these can also be adjusted to the number of points that they received. They can also get a specific message for that kind of a skill. And after this, we go to our last step, which is settings, which is by far the most elaborate one. We have quite a lot of options here. I will just go quickly through all of them. And of course, if you think of a question or something specific, how you would like to use the test, please leave it in the chat as well. First off, always make the test available. That's the first step here. If you don't make the test available and the date is reached when the test should be available, it's still not going to show to your students. So please make sure that it is there. You can choose the maximum number of attempts. If you don't choose this, if you just say unlimited, then they can practice as much as they want. So just keep in mind, if you intend to do manual grading, to maybe put a bit of a limit there. You can decide on the duration in minutes, and this is just going to be the default duration of a test. We also have exceptions that you can give to students if they have learning disabilities or any other special conditions. You can always give additional time to specific students or to groups. In the next section, you can decide what's going to happen to the results of the test. So first of all, you can decide on the passing rate, and there's also a new feature coming up this week that's going to make it possible to transform the percentage that you would usually get as a result of a test into a grade. So you will also be able to assign grades like from A to F or from 1 to 10, 1 to 5, whichever way you like it. But for now, we only have it in percentages. And then in the next step, you will decide if you want your results to be available right after the test is done. So the moment the students submit a test, will they be able to see their results, and what exactly are they going to be able to see? So you see a few options here. For example, you can only show them the test answers or only their scores. And if you want your students to practice and to really learn from the test, I would say always release everything. And if you want to do additional grading, just say do not release results. Then you can go in and do the grading yourself and release them afterwards. Here we see our sections come in handy again. So you can also make it possible for students to view results by section. So that means they will see the name of the section that they chose, like integers or negative numbers, and they will see how well they scored within that section. And the last option in this section is to show the points per question during the test and afterwards. So this is also up to you. If you want them to be aware how much one question is worth, you can make it possible here. Then we go to the next section, which is the tools. In the first option, you can choose between practice mode and test mode. And the practice mode is the one that allows your students to do the checks. So they can either check the whole test before submitting it, or you can make it possible that they check only certain questions before submitting the test. So in my case here, I chose practice mode just because I wanted to show you what it looks like with the checks. And I said that my maximum number of checks is going to be 1. And this number is going to apply to all of the questions where I enable the checks. So in this case, it's going to stay at 1. I also said that I want each question to be checked individually. And that's where I'm ending up with my check settings. Then we go into another cool option, which is that you can allow your students to upload files during the test. And there's 2 options. They can upload files per question or per the whole test. So that means that if your students are writing some solutions on a piece of paper and you want them to upload that into the test, they can just take a photo with their phone, they can scan a QR code on the screen, and the picture is going to upload it directly in the test. And also when you're grading the test later on, you're going to see that picture right next to their answer. You can easily just check everything on the spot. We also have options to allow the calculator. There's quite a few options here. The basic one, scientific and statistic calculator that you can choose from, or you can just say no, and there's not going to be any calculator on the screen. So also if you want your students to use their own physical calculators, you can just disable it on the screen so it's not confusing. Students can also add a note to each question. So this is going to just be like a typed out solution, because if you have an open-ended question where you just have to put in a number, you can have additional box here that allows the student to make a comment if they need to explain something additionally. And the last option here is the text-to-speech support. This feature is available all across the platform while they're practicing. It's automatically enabled, and it makes it possible for students to select a piece of text, and it's going to be read out loud to them. So even the mathematical equations, they should work properly as well here. And it is an optional thing for tests. I think the default setting is no, that it's not available in tests. So just make sure if you're going to be enabling this, I think it's a really cool tool that's going to help a lot of students who are having some issues maybe with reading from the screen or dyslexia or anything like that. You can enable it, but if you're testing in person, maybe make sure everybody has headphones or something like that. And we're coming into the security options. So as I mentioned before, we have quite a lot of options here, depending also if you're going to be testing online or in person. There's different options that might work better for you. The first option is to make that the questions are shown in a random order. So you can have either fixed order or random. Also remember that we could shuffle the questions within sections previously. So just make sure, yeah, if you already set up some kind of order before, maybe leave it at fixed here. You can also restrict access with the following, with the password that you can choose. You can put in the password here. So usually this is used when testing on location. So when everybody comes into the room, you just put the password on the board, everybody puts it in, and they can start the test. There's also IP range restriction. So you can make it possible that everybody has to join through one IP address. So they have to be testing from the same location if you're going to use this. Another option is to make the course available. So when we say the course, we mean that course material that you usually see on the home page when you are practicing, when the students are practicing for homework, for example. So if you make the course available here, that's going to make the tests pausable. Is that the word? I'm not sure. Like you can pause the test and continue it later on. So I would say maybe use this only if it's a practice test, not really if it's like a summative exam. Because in this case, if the students pause the test, they can even leave the platform, come back, and continue doing the test later on. There's also an option to use the full screen mode. That means that at the moment when the test is started, they're going to be forced to open up the full screen mode and they cannot click away. And just keep in mind that if you enable this option, some other options are not going to be available for you anymore. So for example, that file upload that I mentioned before, students are not going to be able to take the phone and upload anything because that would mean leaving the screen. So just see what do you need, what is more of a priority at that moment. So yeah, we don't really recommend using the full screen mode unless it's on tests, on the location testing. So you can help the students right away just in case something happens and the test gets submitted. And the last safety option is the Safe Exam browser. So you can also use this where the students are going to be limited to one browser where they can do the test. They cannot click around. That's it from all of the settings. I know it's a lot for now. If you think of anything today or later on today, even that you have additional questions, please let us know. We're going to be sharing an email address at the end of the presentation. But also we have a help center that's going to cover all of these functions and also with screenshots and additional explanations. So don't stress about remembering everything right away. I'm going to save my test right now. And this is the test that I was editing, the top one here. And I will show you now how you can make some exceptions for your students. So you have this blue person here called Student Settings. When I go there, I see all of my test settings that I just chose. And then if I scroll down, I will see all of the users in my class. So you will see the students and also the teachers or anybody else who is in your class. Sometimes it's us, Sowiso people. So here I can choose anybody. For example, I'm going to choose Axel, my colleague. He's going to get some extra time here. So instead of 120 minutes, I'm going to give him 180 minutes to do a test. And when I save it, you will see that Axel now has 180 minutes. So it's a very clear overview. You're not going to accidentally give any extra time to anybody else. And next to extra time, you can give other exceptions. For example, you can make a different number of attempts. You can even give students access to the test at a different time. So you could also use this for yourself if you want to test the test before your students. So you would make the default settings unavailable. You could come here and make the test available only for yourself. So those are our exceptions, and I'll show you now quickly how the test looks like on the home page. So here is my weekly quiz numbers. This is some other tests that I did. You see that on the first page, you have all of the settings that I chose. So they know exactly how many attempts they have, what's the passing score, if there are any other settings that they should keep in mind. So we try to avoid that they accidentally start a test and they don't really realize that they did it. They have to click on start, and then the test is actually going to be generated. They will have all of their questions here in gray, and then once they answer them, they're going to be, I think purple is the color. So here I can just go into my question. It looks very similar to the practice mode, but of course you don't have any hints or solutions. You cannot refer to a theory page. You just have to do your question here. And this test is one of those tests where you can pause it. So right now I can click stop to pause my test and continue it later, or I can just submit my tests. So right now I'm going to submit the test because we don't have that much time that we go into a lot of other options like grading, for example. So I would like to see if there are any questions maybe on the chat. No, there wasn't any inspiring questions on the way. Okay, I can also refer to the poll then. Yeah, of course. Yeah, take your time. You can also unmute yourself. Okay. Do you maybe have results of the poll?
I can.
Yes. Great. Okay, so we had 1 vote for I'm already using tests, and we had 2 votes for no, but I want to see if it's something I could use. So I really hope that this was inspiring for you if you had an idea of what kind of testing you would like to do on the platform. Don't see it.
See it.
Yeah. Just feedback on wrong answers. How is that possible? Oh yeah. So if you, I think you're authoring already. Are you creating your own materials? I'm assuming. So as an author, as a creator of your own exercises, you can definitely create. You can create positive and negative feedback. Unfortunately, that's not my realm of expertise. I do have some colleagues that could help you out with that. So I will definitely reach out to you afterwards to schedule either a call or maybe we can also solve it via email. Thank you for your question. It's a great question.
And Philip just raised his hand. Somebody go. Oh, somebody. Yeah.
Of course, Philip.
Yeah, indeed. I just wanted to add that I already used the tests for a couple of years now. And I'm very pleased with it. I knew about everything which was explained.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, as I said, we do develop these quite often, and there's going to be a new functionality next week already with the new grading options. So you can assign also from A to F the grades or any other grading system that you might use. So we are developing this functionality quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any other questions maybe I could cover right away now? And that is it for today. This is actually much quicker than anticipated. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining for this quick webinar. Please stay in touch with us. You will be seeing all of our recordings on our help center and also on our website. And I hope that you join us for some other webinars as well. So thank you so much and have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.